Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra-low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious, ultra-low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving. Plus, high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10. HERO.co.
Paula Roberts, the English psychic.
Ingo, looking back, knew considerably more about my, let's call them, abilities than I did. I didn't know. And we were just sort of casually sitting there one afternoon, as we very, very often did. He said something like, "Do you want to go to the moon?" And I was there instantly.
When I've interviewed Ellie Flippin about her uncle, Ingo Swann, she mentioned the English psychic, Paula Roberts. Now, she has quite a background, and it's fascinating. So I wanted to find out more from Paula about her experiences with Ingo and also her own personal experiences. So I checked out her website, which is paularoberts.org, and then I used the GPT chat to provide a bio. So here we go. The English psychic, Paula Roberts. I did BARD, the AI, to find out your background. It gave me a wonderful background sheet.
Sorry, back up a second. Where do you find this?
Okay, if you use Google does BARD, which is an AI, okay, or the other one that is on Bing, and it's the AI chat function. I plugged in. I'm researching the English psychic Paula Roberts. Can you provide any background information? And I got a whole blurb. Sure. Paula Roberts. Yes. So, practicing her gift for 30 years, known for her accurate readings and her ability to connect with people on a deep level. Help thousands of people to find answers to their questions, make decisions, and move forward in their lives. How's that?
That's rather nice, except it's 40 years, but hey, never mind. It's actually more than that. We'll keep that
you need to update the press release somewhere, okay? Or it makes you sound younger, which is good.
Well, this is good. This is good because in actual fact, I mean, I'm on about several different pages of if you Google just my name or whatever. But yes, I'm out there. Definitely out there.
Okay. What I wanted to ask, years ago, you had an encounter. And with it was on a television piece where you had an encounter with Marilyn Monroe's bed. Is that accurate?
Oh, that is absolutely accurate. I had a friend who was a producer of a show which is no longer around called Current Affair, and she called me one day and said, "I've got something about Marilyn Monroe in her bed. Do you want to take a ride out to Jersey?" And that's an important thing. When anybody asks me to do something, I don't know what it is, I say yes. So out we went, and this woman in a antique store, and I think it was called Ho Hocus, never mind. And it was a 4-poster bed, and they had the cameras rolling, and I was sort of chatting generally, but what I did is I put my hands on one of the posters, the 4 posters. Oh, I was completely overcome. Absolutely. Being English, I don't like to do, especially with the camera up my nose. And how should we say? Well, I'll come back to it in a while. I knew Marilyn Monroe was on that bed, crying her eyes out on the honeymoon. I mean, terribly distressed. So, yes.
Well, and that was, I don't think you anticipated that at all.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, if I anticipated bursting into tears on camera, I would not have done it. Oh, no. And in fact, that actually leads into another sort of thing about my background. Everything I've done is purely natural, spontaneous, absolutely not trained. If I'm going to get it like going to the moon, I just can. I don't know how or why, but I just can.
That was another one you did with Ingo Swann.
I think perhaps for people who haven't heard me on your show before, because this is our first meeting, so to speak, it's probably best to have a little bit of background on that. I realized Ingo, looking back, knew considerably more about my, let's call them, abilities than I did. I didn't know. And we were just sort of casually sitting there one afternoon, as we very, very often did. He said something like, "Do you want to go to the moon?" And I was there instantly. Absolutely instantly. It takes no time to get to the moon. Speedy service. No, and I'm sort of looking around, and he said something of the sort, "Well, can you see a sort of opening?" And I said, oh yes. Well, he said, want to do it. And so I went in, and I was, how should I say, standing on a little platform inside the moon, which seemed to be basically hollow, as I recall it. And there were a lot of the beings, shall we say, rushing around. They seemed to be extremely busy. I don't know what they were doing, very, very busy. I don't know how long I stayed there. And I think, looking backwards, there was some mention of a mothership nearby, but I suddenly got the feeling that we were not welcome. There was a great feeling of hostility, and Ingo said, I think you better come back, and wish I was back. Now, the thing about that is there was obviously some written report about that, because I remember Ingo casually telling me a day or so after the papers had been picked up, I think it was the FBI, CIA, whoever, and I understood that that was whatever I'd done on the moon. Now, I think also for your listeners who might be aware of, which I wasn't, all the work that's been done on people going to the moon, shall we say, but I knew nothing. And I know if you've got youngsters listening to you, imagining a life without Google is something beyond their comprehension. But he knew that whatever I was getting was, shall we say, pure. Mm-hmm. Absolutely pure, because I didn't know. I mean, if you told me the moon was hollow and the beings running around, I just thought you were a little bit, well, as they say, a few sandwiches short of a picnic, as we say in England.
Okay, when you met Ingo Swann, I think part of what my memory is that there was an assignment.
Yes, what it was, I did a lot of work, or my initial work, like the first ghost hunt I ever went on, was with Dr. Michael and Mickey Mayer, and she had been trained, going way back, by Gertrude Schmeiler. And what I loved about working with Mickey is she had extremely strict protocols, which I loved. But anyway, same sort of thing. She said one day, well, could you meet me down at this address? So I, as I always do, yes, I'll meet you there. We went in, we met him. Now, I did not have the slightest idea who Ingo was. There he is, all sitting around and having a drink. Now, I didn't drink, but, being polite, they'll have champagne, so I had a glass of champagne. And then I realized they wanted me to walk through one of his the floors. Ingo lived in a converted industrial building, and 3 or 4 floors were occupied by tenants. And I learned this afterwards. There was problems letting one of the particular floors. Now, I walked around, that's probably so many stories to tell you. When I do something like that, I just walk slowly through. I don't meditate, I don't burn sage, I don't fast, nothing. And I just walked. And I walked towards the front of the room, the building, it's open space, and I saw, at the moment, I can still see it, the top left-hand corner, a lot of loud music. Then I walked around and I realized that somebody had died in the bathroom. I heard later that that was absolutely true. Other than music, one of his tenants had a jukebox there. So I realized I had sort of, should we say, earned my place at the table with Ingo. So that's how we started off.
Well, you became friends. So like you said about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were absolutely friends. I mean, we didn't, but as I said, looking backwards, I did sort of earn my place at the table, but we became very close friends, and he liked to refer to me as his girlfriend, an honorary title, you understand. But yes, I mean, I spent a lot of time with his family, and I believe dear Ellie, who
yes.
was his niece, and she was at college. She was on the office. I saw a great deal of her, and my mother went and had Christmas lunch with him. I mean, we spent time not only just with Ingo, but with family as well. So yes, we were very close friends. Yes.
When you do a reading or you sense something, and I've in researching some of this, your background, saying that every space is full and we are surrounded. We're never alone.
Oh, yes, I realized that when I was a very, very, very small child. The realization came to me that wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you are not alone. Now, I'm very small at this point. I certainly didn't have the vocabulary to say to anybody, what's this funny thing I'm feeling? But I knew. And I sensed them as, spirit. And when I say spirit, I don't necessarily mean spirit of people who've been living. It's a combination of those things, shall we say. But when you're very little and realize whatever you're doing, even in the bathroom, you are not alone. It's disconcerting. But also at that same age, I also, should we say, went out into far space. And that is also very disconcerting because, again, I had a sense of there's no end to space. And the human mind can't really get around that because, we deal in things being finite and it's not. So there's that knowledge, we said, I had from a very, very small child.
When you tried to develop your abilities, did you work in a circle or with a group?
Oh, no. Well, yes and no. Basically, I think the important thing is somebody's just written to me today and said, do I teach? I can't teach because I've never been taught to do anything. But when I was living in London, Chelsea, real one, not one here. Not that that's not real. I lived around the corner of the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain, and I was developing an interest in that. So I went along, and there was a group of young spiritualists, shall we say. And one of our first sessions, bear in mind, I didn't know anything about anything I've read, because why would I read a book about something I knew nothing about? I had an idea what spiritualism was. It's big in England, as you may probably know. But we sat in a group of, there were about 6 of us, and a young medium who was supposed to be some sort of medium. Okay, so we sat, and he produced, I don't know if it was a plate or let's call it a big plate, and asked us each to put in a piece of jewellery. So we did that, and asked us all to meditate for, let's say, 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. And then I was sitting to his right, and he started off to the left and asked people, what they saw, and tinkling music and stars, and okay. So it came around to me, and I said, well, I've got this man. He's in front of, we call it a terrace house, a row house. He's got a green door, he's got a cane, and I've got a big pain up my left arm. Well, he snatched the ring away out of me and said, oh, that's my grandfather, Joe. And then he turned his back to me, which was very difficult because it's a big room. And he's saying to the people who got sort of stars and whatever else, well, you did very well. And that was my first inkling, Wendy, of, should we say, the jealousy, because looking back, I hit it out of the ballpark. I mean, knowing nothing about nothing. Mm-hmm. But, so was I ever trained? No. The same way when, I don't know how Mickey got hold of me. I mean, I must have met her sometime to go out in the general weighing in, and I got that ghost as well. That actually is still out there. One can still find it. It's the first series, number 7. So to answer your question, was the only thing I was trained in was handwriting analysis, which is nothing to do with the psychic work. But no, nobody trained me to do anything at all. I'm a natural or spontaneous soul, which is why, of course, I can't teach, because I can't teach anybody who I've got nothing to teach anybody.
Well, but you absolutely love what you're doing in terms of going into the ghost in an environment that is haunted, where you could sense, yeah.
Absolutely, but only if it's strictly regulated. I mean, if somebody says to me, I'm just joking, they got pink elephants in their kitchen or whatever, I don't really want to know. I only want to know if this, and of course, this sort of thing doesn't exist to my knowledge anymore. I wish it did. But I like to go into an environment where I know nothing, and then if I come up with anything, I know that that's a pure thing that I've come up with. It isn't based on anything they've told me. And I've got a friend, the one person in the field, that I'm friendly with. His name is Carl Petrie. He's out in Jersey. I've always got to say to people, did you see the sixth sense? Little boy who sees dead people, because he sees dead people. He sees them externally, and I know internally. So we've done several things together. I mean, when I say together, if it's a building, he goes in first, and then I go in second. There's no exchange of information, but we always get the same thing. But let me explain as best if I may, when I say I see something, I see it as if it's a memory. It's internal, except of course it's not my memory. But Carl does something different. He sees the same thing externally. It's different. It's different. But we've done quite a few things together with great accuracy, if I may say so.
There's another thing on your website. You talk about a very haunted home. And that was Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers. There's another one. Well, Joan Rivers is one, and then there's another one much more haunted. Yes, again, Mickey Mayer had asked a group of people. Let me tell you, days gone past. But when there was a big experiment, should we call it, what would happen, the first thing, is somebody would get hold of Mickey and say, do you know, they've reason to believe something's happening. So the first step is to give that person a psychological test because, well, for obvious reasons. And then, well, yes, somebody might have had one too many, should we say. Okay, so then there is a floor plan drawn. And then she gets hold of several intuitive, sensitive, she calls them, and several skeptics. So you go to this building, and it's completely empty except for what they call a blind assistant. Now, that assistant knows nothing. And you walk around with your floor plan saying, well, I see this and that and the other, whatever. And then it is afterwards tallied mathematically. And often when Nikki had a sort of smaller project and she only asked for one person, that would have been me, because I seem to, she said I have super psi, which is considerably beyond chance. And yes, well, Joan Rivers, she publicized it. I mean, I would never talk about the famous person afterwards, but of course she's deceased. And she was very happy with her ghosts. I would not have lived there. I mean, it was a glorious place. I mean, it's like a Louis XV. It had a ballroom. Not for me, thank you very much. I mean, they had a minstrel gallery above the ballroom. And I thought, there's something very strange about this. And at the end, there was the elevator, private little elevator. I thought, there's something terribly wrong here. Found out afterwards that during the time they were being renovated, at night, they had left a sanding machine up on the minstrel's gallery. And the next day they came in, the elevator cab, had gone right to the top, almost to the roof, which you can't naturally do. And the sander was right down at the bottom of the shaft. Apparently, when the lady, she was sort of a Miss Havisham kind of person, when they had picked up her body, they had dropped her in the elevator, which is why the elevator was not nice at all. But that was massively haunted. I mean, there were stories of lights going on and off in the building when it was being renovated, when there was nobody in there. I mean, I wouldn't have lived there, thank you very much. But she seemed to be comfortable with her ghosties. Some people are, and some people are not. But the other house out in it was near Delaware Gap, a long way out. And that was a client of mine. And from the time I first met her, she was an interesting person because, should I tell your listeners what a time slip is?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay, time slip. Now, she lived in time slips. She said she couldn't walk around, say, Lexington Avenue because it was too crowded, full of people. Now, to a regular person, it could look completely empty, but she lived in time slips. And she had found this house. She was a trader, stockbroker. And so she had the most, how should we say, material of jobs. She was a stockbroker. But in the evenings or weekends, she went out to this house. Now, this house was unbelievably haunted. And she said to me, and I told about Carl, so he and I went out there, and we weren't quite sure which house it was, and we were talking out in the country because it didn't have a name on it. But I thought perhaps it was this house. Walked up the stairs, and it had sort of big pillars on the front porch, veranda, whatever you like to call it, and I touched one of the pillars and I nearly fell down. I was so giddy from it. I said, Carl, this is the right house. And we went in and she went off and left us to it, and we walked around the house again separately, coming up with all sorts of impressions, shall we say. And he also films. He was filming me talking about the things I'd seen, and we were in the sort of front, I suppose in that age it would be called a parlour. Now, there were no windows open, there were no doors open, and I got a very cold breeze down one arm, and above there was a big thud. Now, when he looked at the video later, and he's had this verified, the black shadow goes right across me. You couldn't see it, but you could see it on the camera. And then in the kitchen, we were talking about ghosts and things. Books started falling off the shelves. Maria, her name was, loved, because it was a beautiful house, but she wasn't really very, she preferred to be by herself, but she got this gorgeous house that people would invite themselves around, okay, and she would say, stuff happens here. Yeah, sure, yeah. Well, at 4 o'clock in the morning, there's a little wooden staircase, and the farmer would live there before, would trample down the staircase at 4 o'clock in the morning. But they were upstairs, a group of people watching television, I think, and one man, there was a noise in the kitchen. So he said, there's a big sort of macho man, I'll go down and sort that out. He went down, every single cupboard and drawer was wide open. Off they went. Now, what was more really tragic, really, she decided that we met somebody else, Carl and I, that we were going to film this. We're going to make a sort of documentary of it. And she was a client, and I'll tell you why I mention her, because I don't mention clients normally. But it was a Thursday, and she said she would try to find out a little bit about the people who live there on the local registry, or however you look those things up. So she gave me her card. Now, I don't know where clients work. I don't need to know. It doesn't matter. It was Kenzie Fitzgerald. And then the next day, was it a Tuesday? It was 9/11. She was there. I mean, but Carl and I knew, absolutely knew, every fibre of our being, that she went back to her house where she was very happy with all these people. Oh, there's another part of the story. I can talk for hours, by the way. Hearing that house, it's a lovely place, but it was on the market frequently because people would say, ghosts, don't believe in ghosts. Yes, we can believe or not believe. There's a tremendous amount of activity in that house. So a friend of mine, interested in phenomena, she said, well, it was on the market once. Well, why don't we go out and look at it? And, I'll pretend I'm a buyer. So we went out and pretended she was a buyer. And there was a very nervous real estate person. As we were walking from one room to the other, all the lights were flickering. But I thought, you've always got to discount the logical. I thought, old wiring, lights, never mind. So in the end, she said, well, let's go down to the cellar. And she said, it's not a spooky cellar. And I thought, well, nobody says it would be, did they? Okay, so we went down there. And there was a big metal copper cylinder, let's call it a cylinder, very, very big thing. And relevant, I haven't lived in a house, I've lived in apartments just about all my life. Okay, so she's chatting about the washing machine or whatever, and this great big cylinder started to make a tremendous noise. I don't know, perhaps they do make it, what do I do? And I realized after got totally spooked and said, they must be delivering oil. Okay, so we left, and then about 3 o'clock the next morning, something or somebody woke me up and said, think about that. If somebody had been delivering oil at that time, they would have been on the gravel path right up above your head, so you'd have heard that. You would have also seen them when they went out. There was nothing being. And I spoke to, I suppose it was Carl who knows about these things. No, those things don't make a noise. So, yeah. So that was Maria's house, yes.
When you went in and you sensed that, is there something that draws people to these homes who are able to live with all of those entities?
Oh, she knew about it. In fact, when she first used to be there, because they being let's call them spirits, very, very pleased to be in contact with somebody who's aware of them. So they'd be jumping up and down their bed all night, and she said to them one night, now look here, I've got to get up in the morning and go to the city. So we can do one of two things. Either you're going to let me sleep at night, or I'm going to sell this place and sell it to people with a lot of little children. You won't like that, will you? And they behave themselves like, no, you talk to them. And they behave themselves after that. But she had one other story that sounds... okay. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful garden. And she said she'd done a lot of work in the garden one afternoon, but there was one little tree, and she hadn't, I think, trimmed it with a sapling or whatever. So she left that for the next morning, went to bed, got up the next morning, and it had all been done. Now, if you didn't know Maria and realized she was a very accomplished, very, very intelligent person who, as I said, could not have lived a more material life as a person, but she was in touch with people. She was in touch. I wouldn't live there, thank you very much. But I said the funny thing is, people who are in that neighborhood, people do think, oh, ghosts, no such thing. Oh, actually, that brings me to the General Wayne Inn. May I tell you about that?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. Nikki Mayer got hold of me. I thought, I don't remember having met her, but obviously she did, and said to me, can you be ready with an overnight bag next Tuesday at 6 o'clock? Okay, so she called me at 6 o'clock and said, go to Penn Station and somebody will give you a ticket. So, okay, got on a train, went out to Philly. A group of people, didn't know anybody. Went out in the middle of the night to what was then the General Wayne Inn. We had to wait. It was still a functioning inn restaurant at that point. So we waited until everybody had left. And then the same thing, we were given the blueprint. Went all the way around. Now for later, there was one room. It was the poll room or the post office room. I walked in. I thought I got flu, and I was going to throw up. Walk out, fine. Walked in. Oh, it was. But also there was a very funny atmosphere in the back office. Okay. So went downstairs, and there was a cellar. Now the cellar was an earthen cellar. I mean, it goes back to 1724, whatever it was. And I just walked 2 steps down the cellar, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. There's a soldier here. He's very, very frightened. He's been left behind, and he's very, very frightened. Okay, so we gave in our papers, got together over breakfast the next morning with everybody. The soldier was the ghost that has been seen most often for hundreds of years. So sort of bingo. But I didn't know anything about anything. Now, I'll tell you what's interesting now, because I was there a couple of times. Oh, no, wait a minute, I've forgotten the office. Not so long afterwards, one of the co-owners murdered his partner in that office. So I was getting it before it had even happened, not afterwards.
What did you sense? What did you sense before it happened? Nothing specific. It just felt wrong. I didn't know what else to say. Mm-hmm. It just was most uncomfortable. But it changed hands many times, and the last I know of it, it was taken over by an Orthodox yeshiva. And I read way back when it had been purchased that, the rabbi who was in charge of it said, well, they don't believe in ghosts. And I thought, well, again, believing and not believing is nothing to do with it. Yes.
But, there's no word of it afterwards. So it can't not be extremely active. It doesn't matter who's there.
Yeah, it said 2005 is when it was converted, and
you're even more up to date than I am. Okay, I would love to know what's happening there, but I guess we won't know.
It's fascinating. It does sound like it was haunted, especially when the murder also happens there. So that's just more karma.
Yeah. I mean, there's much more to that story, and as I said, it's on the Unsolved Mysteries. It's a tremendous amount of should we say, activity there. Huge amount. It's more than just what I've said. And it doesn't matter. Again, it's like with this house, people saying, oh, well, they didn't believe in ghosts. It's a lovely house. It was a beautiful house. So, do it up, and they're out of there very shortly.
When
Same
you're
thing,
dealing,
same thing.
when you're dealing with spaces that are haunted, is there a general atmosphere? Like, is it more haunted in Europe than it is in the U.S.?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. No, I'm sure not. No, I'm sure not. I'm sure not. And there are places that are, fairly modern. People think of, hauntings have to be back, way back when, but not necessarily. Not necessarily. It can be, no, not necessarily. But interesting question. Are there more haunted places in Europe? Well, obviously, yes, because, the building. Take, for instance, the Coronation.
Yes.
People are saying, it looks medieval. I said, oh, yeah, it's 1,000 years old. That certainly is a touch. So, yes, it does look a bit old. Yes, obviously, by yes, but
I would think,
not necessarily.
I would think some of the things that they use, like the crown and all of those things, might have some residual energy, which would add a little bit.
How could they not? How could they not?
Yeah.
Imagine the amount of, let's call it energy, put into each coronation. I don't mean sort of coronation, I was glued to it, of course. So it carries not only symbolism, but what can I say? Yes, obviously, yes.
Do you have any impressions about what's going to happen, since we're on this topic, for the new king?
No, I do, but I do remember this. When I was very, very young, I read, and I know what I read, that Nostradamus apparently said, who knows what Nostradamus said, but I remember clearly, and this was back when I was a teenager, more than a couple of years ago, that Charles would be the end of the dynasty. That would probably be in my lifetime, but, just logically, I could see that happening.
A tidbit. So you could see that one actually happening.
Well, I think, that's why when I do work, I like to know nothing. And of course, we can't, you can't know nothing about, the royal family.
Yeah.
We know everything about them. But I knew that from a very, very long time ago. But logically, could I see that happening? Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's done. I think it's done.
A different topic. You're featured in a film called The Kybalion. How did you like that?
Oh, Kybalion.
Oh, yeah,
yes,
thank you.
Kybalion, yes. That's perfectly right. Ronnie Thomas, filmmaker, I had met him. He was something to do with the Morbid Anatomy Library, and I'd met him a few times with Shannon Taggart. And he rang me up one day and said, I'm doing a film. I'd like you to be part of it. I always say yes. And he said, I'm doing this sort of strange film, and I want something about mentalism. And I said, oh, well, I don't do mentalism. I think it's a party trick. I don't know how to do that. No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're the right person. He said, okay. So he came around, and we did the session. Basically, talking the Kybalion, the book is very, there are 7 of us talking about different disciplines. It is extremely complex, how should we say, philosophy, idea, concept, shall we say. Well, I chatted about being really not from this realm. I'm not from this earth. I'm from somewhere entirely. And I just chatted away like I'm chatting to you. But that apparently fell in perfectly with the first principle of the Kybalion, which, by the way, if anybody sees it, I think it's a magnificent piece of film cinematography, is it called? Yes, it is, yes. Even though, I have to warn friends of mine, the beginning, people haven't got any clothes on.
Yeah.
That's completely part of the film. It's not
up front, yeah.
Yeah, but I assure them that I've got my clothes on.
Yes, yeah. Well, I saw the snippet. Daz Smith did an interview with you, and I saw the snippet that you provided him. It's known as the Master Key, and this is Hermetic philosophy and based on ancient wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly that. It's but it was great fun to see it. Ronnie's already winning awards, the Director of the Year in Turin and so on and so on. And we're considering perhaps trying to get it shown in an actual proper cinema in New York before too long, we hope. So I love being challenged. I think that's the word. I love being challenged, and that was challenging because when I look at it, I think, why am I wearing that dress? My makeup looks terrible. I'm slouchy. What do I think my hair looks like?
But you're so natural. You're very comfortable with who you are.
Well, I think so. I mean, okay, let's go back to something else, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Doing what I do, you have to survive, right from the beginning, truly not care what anybody says. I mean, family, friends, anybody, because you can't care. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about lip service. I'm not talking about, let's pretend we don't care. You have to not care. And at this stage of my life, I've done a huge amount, I have to say. I've got an archive, I've done huge amounts, and I know what I've done, and if nobody else wants to talk about it, I mean, that's fine. I know who I am, and I know what I've done, and I know what I'm capable of doing. And if somebody else doesn't know that, that's fine.
You do readings, and there are some videos, again, of you offering your services and showing this is what I've done, this is how I do it, like tarot.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm known as somebody who receives clients and does readings, and I tell some of my clients sometimes about the other things I do, and they don't realize that, like my archive, nothing to do with client work at all. But my, should we say, day job, which I absolutely love, is dealing with clients. I love dealing with clients. I mean, that's my, I should say, joy and pride. No, not pride. Pride's the wrong way. But yes, that is indeed what I do. Yes, that's my day job.
The English psychic, Paula Roberts. A quick break.
Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices. And when you download the Baker's app, you can enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. Plus, you can earn fuel points to save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. So it's easy to save big. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Fuel restrictions apply.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
And we continue with the English psychic, Paula Roberts. In terms of the remote viewing, like you did with Ingo, do you do any of that?
No, because it goes back. That's sort of a sad thing, like working with Mickey Mayer. I only do those things when somebody comes to me and asks me. It's one of those funny things. Over the many years, I've gone out and sort of made suggestions about various things. It never works. Never. Somebody has to come to me. It's just that I know this for many years. Like the Shannon, do you know Shannon? Shannon's like probably. She called me up a while ago, coming up to Halloween, and asked if I wanted to do sort of an old-fashioned séance out in a pub out in Brooklyn. I've never done one of those before, but I will say yes. And what is interesting in those sort of things is I get people visiting me beforehand. I had a whole team of people visiting. I mean, ghosts,
right?
Whatever we like, and in great detail. Because again, it harkens back to when they know you're going to come and visit them or talk about them, and they're just clamoring to be seen and heard, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So I get a great deal of information beforehand, and I certainly did in the Brooklyn seance. But I don't think television hasn't done us any favors. People who watch those television shows, we shan't mention anybody in particular, think that you're going to be able to produce this telephone number, whatever. I mean, the whole thing. And that tends not to be. So I can be, if I may say so myself without undue modesty, which means I'm going to, I got great detail. I mean, I'll tell you a funny thing. I won't tell you all the rest of the here all day, which is fine as far as I'm concerned, which is quite time is. So, I was then asked, after producing sort of several people, if I could do a bit more. And, that's an important thing, perhaps, to any of your listeners. I never edit. I never think, that doesn't sound, no editing. And I said, I've got the most bizarre thing here. I've got an old woman dressed like Shirley Temple. Very strange. And yes, my niece was visiting from England that time, and she sort of chirped up from the back. Well, could I say something, please? I said, okay, yes. She used to do, what in England called car boot sales, what you call it here, sort of like yard sales, but public. She said, now this was many years before, there was a woman there on another stand who used to sell antique dolls, and she dressed like Shirley Temple as an old woman. Now, that was nothing to do with my niece. I mean, but it was such a bizarre thing. Why would such a woman, after such a long time, who was not really connected to me, come through? But she did. She did. She did. It was. But again, I think that's important for my work. And if I wanted to tell anybody about any work they're doing, my way of working is never edit. Never edit. I've got another story about editing. Would you like another story?
Yeah.
I've got another story. I was dealing with a client a long time ago. Well, several years, doesn't matter. And German woman. This is relevant to my story. Blonde and blue eyes. You're thinking of a German blonde. Doesn't happen often, but I was talking to her about whatever's happening with her work and her life, and I got a strong impression of bright blue eyes. Again, I never edit, so I said, I've got somebody, I might be a grandfather, but I've got bright blue eyes. And she burst into tears. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll tell you why. She had bright blue eyes, and her grandfather does, but there was a question in the family as to whether he actually was her grandfather, and they were the only two with the bright blue eyes. So she had her answer. Mm. Oh, then he went off and he was showing me his little fishing hut, and he was just really pleased to make himself known. But again, don't edit. I'm looking at a bright blue-eyed person. See other bright blue eyes. It meant the world to her.
I think that helps when you affirm or confirm something that somebody needs that one little piece of information.
It was tremendously important to her. I mean, she loved this person that she thought may or may not be a grandfather, and he came and said, "Yes, I am," so to speak. It was very important to her. Very important. It doesn't happen often. Oh, I've got another funny story. I'm not sure how many hours more you got. I was dealing with a Scottish woman a long time ago, and talking about regular things as I do. It doesn't happen often, and I get a man. He's desperately wanting to attract my attention. He's in a tweed suit, sitting on a hill, grassy hill, overlooking town, and she's next door, and whatever other details. And she said to me, "Oh, that was my first time. Not interested in him." She wanted to get back to whatever I was talking about in her regular life. And I thought, oh, that's a pity. He's made such an effort to come through, and now I just want to talk about him.
It's like, no biggie.
No, I just, no. I listened to Ellie's talk with you a little while ago, and she said something very interesting about Ingo, which I've also got a story about. She said Ingo would always say, "Face your fears." Yeah. Another story from when I'm very, very small. I knew that I drowned. I just knew from, again, very, very, very small child. And I guess I told Ingo about this in passing. And he had been not an associate, but he'd known Hubbard way before Scientology. And Hubbard had we should call it an idea, a thought, a principle, whatever it is, that what you need to do is go back to past lives and sort of flush it out. Okay, so we did this. The time we got back to 6 drownings, I gave up. But I'll tell you what I've done in the last 6 months. I've learned to swim.
Oh, really?
And I am, yes. Many, many years of being absolutely petrified of water, and I'm learning to swim.
Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you.
That's huge.
It kind of is, really. It really is. I mean, I'm still not, I'm still putting my head underwater and blowing bubbles. I can do that, but it's still a bit scary. But, yeah.
So was it a phobia or just an avoidance?
Well, I know it's part of life knowledge. I mean, just absolutely. And I still have a difficulty in. I mean, it took me years and years to be able to see the film, the Titanic, because to me, and I didn't think of the Titanic. People think I didn't, but it's the Atlantic Ocean. It's the deep Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
when I was little, we had these Victorian encyclopedias with all sorts of drawings of deep sea creatures. Oh, I can't look at those.
Yeah.
I cannot. So
Yeah.
it's very. But as it's with Ingo, we got back down to Vikings drowning. So it's more than a phobia. It is. I like to say it's a knowledge, it's a knowing, which you can't explain to anybody else, but you just know.
Mm-hmm.
At least I know.
I guess I use that word because sometimes people will avoid, and they don't know why, until they get the clarity of having a past life memory, and then, it goes away because you've had the memory, you can clear it.
Well, I said that was, that was what Ingo was trying, but I said when we got right back to the Vikings after about 6 drownings, he kind of gave up on me. But, we tried, but, then it's better late than never.
When you're dealing with the spirits who are around you now, do you have spirit guides, specific guides that you work with?
I know. You've opened a can of worms there, Wendy.
Oh, good. Okay. Let's go.
I never had any comment about anybody else's work or feelings or thoughts or anything else. So I'm about to say something.
Okay.
I am very, very fussy for myself about the semantics in my work. Oh, this goes in with something else. I did a past life regression. I come from somewhere very, very, very different. I'll tell you about that perhaps some other time. So, spirit guides, no. Now, am I aware of spirits in general around? Yes. Am I very aware of my mother, my brother, my aunts coming? Yes. But in my own life philosophy, I do not deal with any form of spirit guides. None at all. So, no. Not for me.
Okay. So with this...
But I said, sorry, I beg your pardon.
Well, you have. So there's a reason. So what is that bias or that sense that doesn't work?
Oh, it doesn't work for me because I probably should tell you about my past life regression that I had once, some time ago. And I'm very easy to hypnotize. I'm away with the fairies immediately. And immediately, I was incredibly far out. I was sort of looking into a cave, but it wasn't a cave in a hill or a mountain. It was sort of, I don't know, I was sort of standing at the entrance. And looking in, I could see sort of little groups of what I called, there's little fireworks that children have called sparklers. I don't know what they're called here.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, little groups of sparkles. And I was looking in, and I knew which was my sort of group. And then I think I'd call it a realization that my work, I don't like to call it mission, it's a bit lofty, was giving and receiving information from here.
Mm.
It didn't belong to here. I'm getting information here, which I take back to there. So something else. I'm sort of something else. I'm other. So that's why I don't deal in anything that would be more, should we say, of this plane isn't quite the right way of putting it, but spirit guides, not me. And I said I have no reference to anybody else's. No.
Well, instead of attaching it to a human form or a no longer human form, that something in the same dimension as people, you're getting it from a spirit plane, which doesn't necessarily have any kind of human or any kind of physical attachment to it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the same way over the years.
Okay.
Sorry.
I would say extra dimensional.
Yes, exactly. And over the years, I mean, not so much now, I've had issues with elementals throwing things around.
Yes.
But so they do throw things around every now and again, and I have words with them. But,
Ingo addresses that. At least Ellie told me that he warned her not to go to this certain intersection because the gremlin would sit up there and play with the street lights and cause accidents. He said, don't go there.
They can be naughty. I mean, I've had to have words with them every now and again. Not often, but, it's when they start throwing things around. No, thank you very much.
You mentioned having that encounter when you were doing the remote viewing of the moon with the other beings, whatever. There, have you had any of that kind of encounter here in this area, on Earth?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch your question.
Well, it seemed like what you were referring to when you did the remote viewing of the moon were ETs.
Right.
And I don't know if that's an accurate reference, but have you had that?
Yes, right.
Okay. So have you had any other similar experiences beyond that?
Oh, well, I did go to the pyramids. I did go into the pyramid. Did I tell you that?
No. Let's go there.
Oh, yes. That's a big one because that's documented. Now, just to go back to the moon, I knew there were reports about this, but I cannot locate them. And everybody who might have seen them denies all knowledge of them. And I know they exist somewhere because they went off to the CIA, FBI, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to see that. But let's go to the pyramids. Now, again, what happened with Ingo, he would invite me down. I wouldn't invite myself, but I saw him a couple of times. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So he invited me down one day, whichever. And again, Ingo never said anything to me like, we're going to do this or that or the other. And he said, I give you some coordinates. Oh, fine, okay. So he gave me coordinates. And I immediately said, I see sand. And he said, that's likely. And then I saw the pyramids, and he said, can you go inside? Yeah, sure. Went inside a very, very large oval space. And all the way around there was sort of panels, should we call them. And light was sort of ebbing and flowing in kind of. I knew there was a being there, in essence, shall we say. I couldn't see anything. I mean, anything that looked like a creature, shall we say. Mm-hmm. And then he said, Ingo, because he said very little in this, this is all documented. He said, can you see another sort of opening? And I said, yes. And I went across there. And I said, it's full of rubble. And he said, can you go through? Whoosh, and through to the other side. Now, that other room was full of sarcophagi, but they all had their tops, the lids were off. So I was looking around and looking in. Now, there weren't mummies and there weren't skeletons, but there were all the clothing. And I described them, and I documented as I wrote sketches, all the things that they were wearing in great detail. But I was also aware of the presence. And then also I was aware of balls of light and energy. I mean, there's more to it, but that's sort of paraphrase as I sitting here thinking about it. And I had this strong sense that this was, how should we say, headquarters. These balls of light and energy are in mountains and hills all over the world, but this is headquarters. Let me go a little farther forward. A few years afterwards, and I've got this all documented, the center in St. Petersburg, Russian, you to understand, a center of parapsychology, some physicists, sensible scientists, have come to the conclusion, the thought, that there is a tremendous source of energy coming from the pyramids. And I thought, I told you that years ago. So I find that interesting.
Fascinating. So,
yeah.
Okay, so a mountain like Mount Shasta, which has a lot of history saying that there are UFO sightings and other types of anomalous experiences there. Have you?
No, I see. No, I how should you say? Once I've got that knowledge, but to answer your question, am I thinking of any particular range of mountains or hills? No. It was just, and I that is one. Now, let's go back to the pyramids. I didn't know at exactly that same time there were 4 other people at different locations who had been taught to do remote viewing who were doing the same experiment. And then sometime afterwards, I got the write-up and basically said it was all, people were given letters, numbers, letters, it doesn't matter. And basically it said after 7 pages of writing up that most people got something similar. Nobody got anything dissimilar, but one person got a lot more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. That was me. And I just thought,
not that you're bragging, not that you're patting yourself on the back. No.
It's all documented. Nothing to do with me.
That's fact. Understood.
Yeah,
Understood.
But the thing about, is anything that I say or done, it's like my archive, I can prove I did it. I mean, if somebody says 9/11, I'm sure you're aware, after 9/11, an enormous number of people said they'd seen this and that and the other before. Well, I'm not saying that they did or they didn't, because I don't know, but not documented.
Yeah.
And when I say something, I can produce a TV show, a radio show, a newspaper, a magazine before the event. Because to me, to have it afterwards doesn't make any no proof. I really like having proof.
So for readings, when you help people,
yes,
you don't know anything in advance. What's the most common question that or the most common issue?
If I may, when people call to make an appointment, I say, don't tell me anything about yourself. I want to know nothing. And when they arrive, I do the handwriting, but no one's got handwriting at the moment. I start off with the general reading, and I didn't just ask, demand, say nothing. So I do this big general reading, and then afterwards they can ask questions, but very abbreviated questions, because to me that's the only way to ask in a pure manner. If you're just checking, that's not the same at all. So do I demand to know absolutely nothing about a person? Yeah, sure. The common questions. Well, that's an interesting thing as well. I mean, many television shows, people say, "Oh, got any famous clients?" I say, "Yes." I say, "Who there?" No. Absolute discretion, because I tell you, if somebody is famous or not famous, the questions are exactly the same. Work, love, money, are they going on holiday, property changes, issues with the family. The questions are the same. Very, very rarely are there any difference. I mean, one or two of my clients, I'm giving them very frequent advice about very, 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 very big deals.
Money.
In fact, yes, money. In fact, sometimes I have a little giggle to myself, because in a funny sort of oblique way, I'm sort of helping people move billions of dollars, nothing else. But to go back to those questions, it's the regular questions. Very rarely does anybody ask me a question that's outside that.
In other words, there aren't a lot of people asking about their spirit guides and about how telepathically successful they're going to be. They don't get into the esoteric metaphysical stuff, right?
They tend not to. I have quite a few clients who announce to me that they're spiritual. Academically, I sort of know what they're talking about, but that isn't quite. I mean, it's not a question I don't get, but it's really not so frequent.
Most people want the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once in a while, somebody will ask me to see if a particular teacher, say mentor, is the right fit for them, and I could look at that. But if people sort of say, am I on the right spiritual path? Well, certainly I have been asked that. But I guess spiritual isn't a word I use myself. It doesn't mean say everybody else can, because I do know what they mean. It's just, it's me and my semantics again.
Okay, so the movie, are there other projects that you're in right now that we can check out?
Not yet. I did the 3 interviews with Dad. The last one was a question answer, which was interesting, because I think when people know I knew Ingo very, very, very well, they're curious to sort of know what kind of a person he was, other than his amazing work, and people find that interesting. And they don't have access to people who, well, didn't know him in the way that I knew him. So people are curious about that. It's, well, I mean, after all, that's how you found me.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I realized that Ingo, and I'm trying to explain to him, to people who know nothing about nothing, he's kind of the Leonardo da Vinci, he's the Michelangelo, he's a one-off. But my dealings with him were very friendly. We'd go out and have dinner, I'd watch him painting, we'd hang out with families and things. It wasn't, we didn't talk about this other stuff. It was there. He knew what I could do. He knew what I could do much more than I knew, I realized looking back. But I did make a point talking to Daz. The one thing, I never asked Ingo for anything. Mind you, Wendy, looking back at these projects, I'm thinking, I'd like to ask them what he acted on this. But it's a little bit late now. I'll have to wait till I go up and see him. But I never asked. I mean, I never asked it. That wasn't our relationship, because everybody, no, not everybody, but most of the people who would like to meet him or were around him, they wanted something from him, some knowledge or whatever, which he was more than happy to give. But he can't give that out to thousands and thousands of people. He made his, he wrote his books, and it's all out there. But if people wanted to listen as, how should we say, the other side of him, the private side, it was different. It was different. Mind you, did he occasionally let one know that he was the best and the greatest and the most magnificent? Yeah, he did. But yes, Wendy, he was.
He needed to.
I didn't mind. He was. Yeah, but he was all that. So I didn't mind that. If people say they're wonderful and marvelous and they're not, that's a different matter. He was. But that, he wasn't, in his regular day life, well, in much as I saw, he wasn't sort of, I don't know, drifting up to the moon himself or whatever. He was, I'm not saying a regular, normal person, because he wasn't, but he was very good and kind to me. He really was. But he obviously enjoyed my company. We went out with lots of friends and did all sorts of things together. It was a very nice time. It really was.
I think he felt like you could understand him. And so on that, you were on the same level.
Well, I guess in a way, yes, I suppose it was. But also, I mean, I'm quite quiet and easygoing. I'm not a difficult person. He was a bit temperamental, but I'm not. And his, shall we say, speed of being or whatever, we were very much in sync on that level. I mean, I'm not at all uptight or impatient or whatever. I just sort of sit there watching him painting for hours and hours, and I'd not say anything. That was fine. He was fine. So comfortable. We were comfortable together, absolutely.
I probably shouldn't ask. The book Starfire, that's his novel. To me, he put himself in that novel. That's the main character and the abilities that he describes. At the time that he wrote, he wasn't able to disclose much of the information that has now been disclosed through the CIA files, and Hal Puthoff talking about him and saying, yes, this is what he did.
Right. Right.
But so I see that as basic, and the reason that it wasn't put out as a movie, it was shut down and the book disappeared for a little while, I think was because it was hit too close to home. Right.
It's well, I mean, take the moon. I'm reading now online of all sorts of people who have either seen in one way or the other, or astronauts or whatever, much the same as I've seen on the moon. But the thing is, I know, and Ingo knew, I didn't know anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever I got from my own, well, let's call it experience.
It would be, organic. It was just you. It wasn't you.
Yeah, it's a spontaneous, natural, whatever you like to call it. But see, that's to go back. That's how I work with clients. Don't tell me anything. I'm supposed to be telling you. It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. But yeah.
Are you going to write a book?
No. My dear agent. My dear agent, Lisa Hagen. She helped me through such torture to put out. It's no longer in print. My book on handwriting. And I called her about a year ago and said, Lisa, what do you think about me writing a book? She didn't groan and say, no, she didn't say that. She said, she's a lovely woman. She said, well, I don't think there's much calling for. In other words, for God's sake. She's much too kind to say anything like that. But no. But the thing is, I mean, in my talk to you today, in my interviews with Des, I mean, they've been seen by or listened to an enormous number of people. That, to me, is my writing a book, but in a much more accessible way than putting words on a piece of paper.
Absolutely.
I mean, in my talking to you now, I've covered a lot of ground. I talk a lot. If anybody wants to know about me, I mean, that's not my other side of life, but that's, my esoteric side of life. I'm putting it out there. And I'm very pleased for the opportunity with you and Daz to be able to do that.
I think you've got a tremendous amount of knowledge and insight, and I'm glad you're talking, because the more stories you share, the more people who've had similar experiences are validated, and the more who are curious can find out, oh, this might be a possibility. And somebody who, like you, has documentation of the things that you've experienced gives people,
Right.
I think that's credibility.
Well, I do have credibility because I think, I've got this huge archive in the University of West Georgia, together with you and other people. So, I mean, people who perhaps don't know the field talk about belief system. This isn't a belief system. It's, but I understand people saying that. That's fine. That's them. But I mean, to me, if somebody, let's say somebody of an academic background, doesn't matter what field, sort of tries to poo-poo me, and I'd say, well, you've been to university, perhaps you're a professor at university, never mind the field, but you know what it means to have an archive in a library of the whole person. Whether you believe it, I hate that word, but so you know that's validation. You don't know the field. So, you can look down and so I'm the one with an archive,
Yeah, I read your paper, 90
pounds.
90 pounds of archive material.
I know. And when Lynn Oliveri asked me, I thought, my papers. I mean, I live like most New Yorkers in 600 square feet. I couldn't believe I had so much stuff, and I've still got so much stuff. It amounted to 90 pounds of material. I'm still adding to it all the time, which, I mean, when it comes out, that will also go to my archives. Everything goes to my archives. So I don't need to write a book because I couldn't actually put as much in the book as I can just by chatting, because you can hear I can chat.
Yes, yeah. And this is wonderful. I really appreciate your time. And I know you do have, energy around you. And
oh, yes. I mean, yes, it's like my apartment. I mean, people who are sensitive to atmosphere, as soon as they come in, they realize this place is, well, I know it's sealed because I had a contract with, I like to call my team, my forces. But, you look after me and I'll publicize you. This place is sealed. Yeah. So, but also, I mean, people come in with their issues or problems or whatever it is. Can you imagine if they left a little teeny speck in here? Oh, I could be start really mad person. By the time they get to the elevator, all gone, as if nobody's ever put a foot inside this place. So, yes, energies, yes, sure.
When people have this kind of energy, sometimes it keeps them up at night. And you mentioned earlier a woman who said, let me sleep. Do you have to do the same thing?
I do have trouble sleeping, but it's hard to say because what I would say about that is I'd only lived inside my head. I don't know about anybody else's head. So things that I accept as normal to me might not be to anybody else. So I just accept them because that's been me all my life.
I think that's hard to describe for people because it's like, okay, what voices are you listening to? Well, the ones that are in my head. Oh.
Well, that would have you off to the funny farm. Yes, I mean, my friends, I don't talk about any of this really to my friends because I don't even know among some of my very close friends if they don't really know what I do, or I'm going to use that word that I hate, even if they believe what I do. But you see, the thing is, if you know me, sort of socially, and didn't know what I do, I'm obviously not a crazy person. I don't appear crazy at all, which I think has a purpose. It gives me access to people who would be touch with a barge pole. Somebody like me, if they knew who I really was. Yeah.
You're under the radar. Under the radar.
They'd run out screaming, but hey. So I think we've got enough for probably today, do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got, your website is paularoberts.org, so anyone who wants a reading can connect with you.
That would be wonderful. I'd be delighted to hear from anybody. And I really thank you for the time, Wendy, very, very much indeed.
Thank you.
I shall thank Ellie separately because she put us together. Dear girl. I mean, when I used to call her dear, she's obviously a grown woman at this point, but I knew her as a youngster before she even met her husband. So to me, she's I don't want to presume and say family, but there's a family sort of fondness there.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And if there's anything exciting that you have planned, I would love to hear more from your next adventures, because I'm sure you're going to have more.
Well, I said, I mean, if I'd like to put out in the world, I am available if you're a proper sort of person in the field to do experiments. But I said only under, proper circumstances.
Yeah.
I said if people think they've got pink elephants in the kitchen, well, thank you, but not me.
Understood. Links are in the description for the show. Paula Roberts, the English psychic, her website, paularoberts.org. And she also has links to the interview she did with Daz Smith. He's a remote viewer, and those interviews are posted on YouTube. Thanks for listening.